And here's Phoenix. Yeah, I know. It's Arizona. Some Coyotes fans are more understanding about me calling them Phoenix than others. And others are just like, no, they're the Arizona Coyotes. Get it wrapped up. This expresses it better. This is the collective sentiment when it comes to calling them the Phoenix Coyotes instead of Arizona. Stick it in the backpack. All right, Arizona. So there's an issue with Arizona. Let me just highlight it here. Everybody circled? That's all young guys are counting on to improve. Now, Toronto did it this past season. Toronto had a number of really top, higher echelon talents in order to do it. Arizona has some stuff to work on here. Dvorak could very well be the first line center. I think Domi plays first line, not Jamie McGinn. I think Perlini, Keller, Duclair. Can Anthony Duclair come back from what happened last year? Yes, he's young enough to do it. Clayton Keller needs to be a star player right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Keller. Because otherwise it's going to be a long year for Arizona. Now, I'm not telling any secrets right now and saying that I envision them to finish 6th in the Pacific Division ahead of only Vancouver and an expansion team. It is really hard to move up in the standings now. They need Derek Stepan to play like he is a first-line center. They need an Eric Stahl type season from Stepan. They need Ekman Larsson to stay steady. Hjalmarsson coming in will help. Where I think Arizona's improved incredibly over the last 12 months is here on the blue line. But the fact that the number 6 spot could either be Connaughton or Clendenning tells me that they've still got a lot of work to do. I like both players, both Connaughton and Clendenning. I don't know that I'd want them in a top 6 for a team that I cheered for, especially if I wanted to see them improve and make the playoffs. Copo Bianco, does he come in and play? There's a lot of guys who could come in. There's Wood that they got in a trade from, I believe it was Colorado. Hanley's down here. I don't know why they picked up Zach Ronaldo, but they signed him this summer, so I might as well throw him on the depth chart. Mario Kempe was picked up out of the, I believe, KHL. And again, anytime somebody's signed out of the KHL, I'm going to put a little asterisk there because you never know. But to me, it still looks like a team that's falling short. I really think Domi is the key. I know Keller, Dvorak, Dylan Strome, there's lots of guys, and there's already people saying, oh, Dylan Strome's a bust, and Arizona's going to be at the bottom for a long time. But there is a reason to be optimistic about the future in terms of where they're eventually going to get. But it's a ways off. Antti Ranta, very good goaltender. Played very well in Chicago, very well in New York. This isn't New York or Chicago. And his backup is still Louis. I can't believe he's still in the NHL, Domingue. Domingue had a decent second half, decent enough to get his numbers up, and keeps his job in the NHL. And in terms of third goalies, Merrick Langhammer shows us their number 3 goaltender right now. And I don't see anything to convince me that he's not necessarily going to be the number 3 guy if something happens with Ranta. But there is no room for any injuries. And Derek Stepan is going to be asked to be that mentor, veteran guy that I don't know that I've seen that in him in his play in New York. And I don't know with him this high up on a depth chart and McGinn that high up in the depth chart, if I can look at a team and say, well, yeah, but they could still be a playoff contender. I'm not sold on Krause. I'm not willing to write off Dylan Strome because he hasn't played yet. I never understood this, how quickly people will, oh, bust. Like, when I use that word to describe Jake Virtanen's career and where I think he's probably headed, there are a lot of people who rightfully say things about me saying it. But there's NHL games with Virtanen and there's AHL stats to back up the idea that he's probably not going to be the top 6 forward projected. He was projected to be a power forward. Dylan Strome hasn't cracked an NHL roster yet, so we don't know what he is at the NHL level yet. The problem is, we don't know what a lot of these guys are. There's a lot of players on this list that we can say, well, they should be, and insert point total expectation, insert leadership expectation, insert a lot of things. But in terms of actual hard, raw NHL data, there's not enough. Like, for me, you know, the depth is going to be an issue because I can't put a circle around this top 9 and say that's going to get you to the playoffs. I love Brian Richardson. I think Brad Richardson. I think Brad Richardson's a very, very good forward. He only played 16 games. That's probably why I forgot his name is Brad for 2 seconds. And as much as I think Brad Richardson is absolutely awesome, and I wish Vancouver had kept him, and I'd be very happy to see him back in Vancouver as a 4th-line center, he doesn't get you to the playoffs. And the question that I ask myself when I look at Arizona is, which player is getting them to the playoffs? If you're going to say Clayton Keller, sure, Clayton Keller is one of the most explosive in terms of potential out of the prospects. But it is really hard to look at this team and say, well, if Clayton Keller scores, let's say he gets 65 points. Let's say Keller gets 65 points and he gets the Calder Trophy. So he gets maybe 25 goals. Maybe Domi gets 55 points. It's a reasonable expectation for Domi right now. Where's the rest of the scoring and who's going to get it? You know, Ekman Larson, he can score goals. He can score points off the blue line. They don't have the problem on the blue line that some of the other teams have in terms of that horse that can play 25 minutes a night. Ekman Larson is that. But then you look at the depth behind him. I like Goligoski. Hjalmarsson's good. Luke Schenn, Chychrun. I think Chychrun can become that top 4 really, really solid player. He's not there yet. And my biggest concern with Chychrun is, you know, they draft him after he's fallen. His status falls in the draft. They draft him. And it's this big thing that Arizona got a coup at that draft and they picked him up. But did they rush him? We won't know for probably a year or two. But when it's a defenseman and you thrust him into an NHL role, sure, sometimes they come through and they play really well. But it can be really tough for them once the NHL starts to adapt to them and starts to adapt their game to attack weaknesses that show up. I really can't project this team out to finish any higher than last year. But if it makes Arizona fans feel better, I don't think they're going to fall either. And the gravity defying is going to be through Raanta. If Raanta plays, and if he gets a save percentage of, say, .925 or higher, then Arizona's going to be playing in important games in late January. If Raanta drops into, say, the .919 range, they're probably out by Christmas. It's a fine line because I don't know how much scoring this team's going to do. I don't know how much depth they've got, and they really need Raanta to play at the top of his game regularly. They need to win games 2-1. They need to win games 3-2 because much like Carolina that I talked about earlier, I think it was last week, these guys are going to have to trap. And Rick Tocchet coming in and looking at this lineup, there's a lot he can do with it. But they're going to have to, with this defense, with guys like Schenn and Chychrun and Hjalmarsson, they're going to have to clog up that neutral zone. They're going to have to frustrate other teams, and they're going to have to limit chances against. And I understand that every coach preaches that, but in Arizona, it's going to have to be their mantra. Clog everything up, make sure they get no decent shots on net, and just, you know, hit as many people as you can and just play a big game all the time. Play that physical style and don't take any stupid chances. And this is where rookies come in. Because for a guy like Keller coming in, if this team's playing a trap and if his point totals are being affected, and especially if they go into a rut, he may feel pressure to take that chance and end up getting benched. Happens a lot with rookies. I look at Konechny last year in Philly, and I don't mind that he got benched here and there. Because young players are going to take chances that the older players aren't necessarily going to take, because they want to make that impression. Their boss is watching upstairs. I want to show you that what I can do. And you can get frustrated playing a stifling defensive game or being forced to play third or fourth line minutes when you think that you're better than that. So you may take that chance, and the coach may say, look, I know what you're doing, but geez, man, you got to take a seat at the end of that bench. You cost us a goal there, and our whole game is to limit chances against. So since you're detracting from that, from this goal, we're going to have to bench you. We're going to have to put you up in the press box for now. So it's going to be a lot of low-scoring games for the Arizona Coyotes this year if they're going to get ahead. It's going to be Antti Raanta that keeps their butts out of last place. And it's going to come down to, can this top four, which is solid, hold up over a full 82-game schedule? Can Luke Schenn play top 4 minutes, play 82 games with the style that he plays? Is Alex Goligoski getting to the age where he's going to start experiencing injuries and he's going to start breaking down too? Because that can happen. And I'm not saying it to insult anybody. He's in his early 30s. He's 32 years of age, and that can happen, where your body just starts to break down, especially as a blue liner. So I would look for, honestly, I'd look for the shot blocks to go up. I'd look for hit totals to go up. I'd look for scoring chances against to go down. And I really think that for Arizona this year, it's going to be sort of like Toronto was the year before Austin Matthews came in, where you're going to have to measure improvement on those stats and not worry so much about the wins and losses. Because if they treat Tocchet right, they're going to say, all right, we're not worried as much about the wins and losses. We're worried about all these guys I've got circled here and their development. And as long as you can help make them NHL players, we're not worried so much about where we finish. Because it's about the future. I think Arizona's got that. I think they understand that's where it's going. The biggest problem is this. When you're having problems with attendance, and there's always rumors about potential moves, and there's some concern about fans coming out for games, it is really hard to sell fans on the rebuild, the long rebuild. And they are long rebuilds. It's a long rebuild here. It's a long rebuild coming up in Colorado, I think, if they don't treat the Duchesne situation properly. And it's a big rebuild, long rebuild for Vancouver. And in all three cities, you're going to see attendance drop, and you're going to hear rumors, at least in Arizona, that maybe this is it. I don't think it is. I think they're going to stay in Arizona. I don't know what city in Arizona they're going to play in. Maybe they go back to Phoenix for a new arena. Maybe they end up leaving Glendale and going somewhere else. It's definitely not a workable situation in Glendale for them. But we'll see what happens. And I hope that pressure doesn't fall on all these kids, because that's not really fair. But let me know where I wasn't fair in my preview in the comment section below. Let me know what you think, especially if you're a Coyotes fan. I think there are reasons to be excited. I mean, you know, Domi, Dvorak, Strome, Perlini, Keller, and Chychrun, I think, are all potential blue chips in the future. Krause hasn't played long enough or got to that age where you can say he's written off yet. And Duclair, maybe he bounces back from last season. But there are things to like if you're a Coyotes fan. I just don't think as a team they're there yet. So let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will be sure to talk to you guys again really, really soon.